Hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar today to discuss a very interesting topic on Gujarat's solar market, new opportunities to tap. The event is organized by JMK Research, a boutique consulting firm focusing on renewable and e-mobility segments. The session is supported by Goodbee, a leading manufacturer of string inverters. Now quickly on the format of the webinar. The webinar will consist of an interactive discussion with our eminent speakers, followed by a Q&A session in the last 15 minutes. Participants are welcome to submit their questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar window. I request my panelists to answer them in parallel also if possible. Some of the key discussion points for today's session are outlook for 2022 for Gujarat rooftop solar market, opportunities in open access solar market, key takeaways from Surya Urja Rooftop Yojana, success factors for residential segment growth, opportunities to tap MSME segment, policy roundup, and lastly, the key challenges to address. And now to take on the discussions today, we have a very diverse mix of industry experts with us. A quick introduction of our experts here today. So we have Mr. Vipin Bhardwaj, Sales Manager, India, Goodbee. Mr. Vineet Mittal, Co-founder and Director, Navitas Solar. Mr. Hiten Parekh, Chief Business Officer from Solar Square. Mr. Shobhit Rai, Director, Prozeal Infra. And Mr. Indu Kalp Sekia, Head Business Development North from CleanMax. Thank you all to be a part of this discussion today. Without taking much time now, we would like to start with Mr. Vipin with you now. So as a leading global string inverter supplier, we would want to know your experience in the rooftop solar market in Gujarat. So over to you, Vipin.
Thank you very much, Gini, for giving me this opportunity to be interacting with all our eminent panelists here in the panel and along with the key industrial player as a participant. So myself, Vipin Bhardwaj, I take care sales in India for Goodbee. So particularly Gujarat, you can see it's a very innovative state, which leads in every technology as a paving way, because whenever you will see any pilot project happen in India, so that probably start or in most of cases it starts from Gujarat only, being same in case of Go Solar as well. So our experience with Gujarat was quite good. Last year, residential segment, we got a good job and we were around 17% of market share out of the complete tender. And residential tender is, you see, it's complete example setting job has been done by Gujarat team. Gujarat team, I'm saying Gujarat team is including our government in Gujarat, our industries in Gujarat, our key players in solar, every person in Gujarat. So it's a combination of all effort. So that makes it happens. And you see, last year the residential tender was allocated for 600 megawatt, and after seeing a much intense job has been done on the ground, it has been extended to 750 megawatt. So you see, after so many uncertainties like COVID, we have seen, then the taxation and the prices on the logistic part, we are facing some challenges. Even after that, things are going good in Gujarat, and the part on business is going grow well. Right now, on the residential part, is something like this, and yes, for the utility part, we have seen a very lucrative scheme, that is small scale distribution policies. So there were seen some challenges, and now even companies are moving ahead with that part also, without having clarity on subsidies. Might be it could be taken after a month, or you can say some time, but it will be taken up. But still, without that part, people are very much optimistic about that and going ahead. So that's the potential of Gujarat, I must say that.
Yeah, thank you, Vipin, for giving the insights from your end and setting up the context for our discussion today. So now let's hear the views of other panelists in the session. So I would request Mr. Hiten to share his views and experience in the rooftop solar segment, particularly in Gujarat. And also if you can, throw some light in the residential rooftop segment also, if you have done something in Gujarat particularly. So over to you, Mr. Hiten.
Yeah, thanks Vipin for setting the tone and the context and in your opening remarks, and also thanks to Ginny and JMK for having me. Uh, for sure, Gujarat has achieved and set a benchmark in rooftop sector. In general, they are already the leading state. However, what is most impressive is the state hosts more than 1 gigawatt of residential solar installations alone, which is, in my mind, just a phenomenal achievement and is going to be a big role model for many other states to follow. Uh, and all this 1 gigawatt of residential solar has been achieved in the last 4.5 years. And what has also have been achieved by this impetus is a lot of entrepreneurs have been given an opportunity to participate in the solar boom in the country. And the way the program has been designed, it has different categories wherein the established players can bid in the category A. The new upcoming players can participate in category B with a cap of 500 kilowatt to begin with, and then I believe they were also given an opportunity to increase their capacity if they wanted to. And then there is another category C, which is for very small solo entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, wherein a one-man, two-man company can also set up some small allocation in the solar residential program. Also, they have made a lot of these initiatives and processes through digitalization and through use of the internet portals, which brings in a lot of ease and lot of clarity and lot of transparency. And the customers are the companies are very clear as to how they have to apply for this. And also the discoms are playing a great role in speedy installations of the meters and the net metering agreements. Also, the subsidy disbursement is not taking much longer than 60 to 90 days, which can be improved, but it is still being paid, which is another very positive aspect of the state. Uh, Also, I think the ground is set for the new upcoming 900 megawatt of residential solar tender, which is expected in maybe couple of months. And that alone of a size of close to a gigawatt of residential tender is going to be another strong momentum in the state. Also, what is impressive in the state is the whole ecosystem for the residential solar, the way it is developed, wherein you have fabricators who will ship you the structures. You have a BOS kits made available for different kilowatts of 3, 5, 10, and so on. And then there's also a lot of labors available. So delivering on the promise you made to the customer is being met. And also, because of the tight control on the pre-dispatch inspection on the DCR modules, which is controlled by the DISCOM and through their inspectors. This is also ensuring that the subsidy amount is being used in the right equipments, and also the modules of a good quality are being deployed throughout the state. Beyond this, I feel improvement areas are on the charges that the government has included in the new policy for C&I customers. Also, there is a element of banking wheeling charges, which is not keeping the state as a C&I focus to be attractive. But nevertheless, at the same time, the market is also very vibrant for open access, and especially the policy is supporting the solar and the wind hybrid systems as well. So the large corporates, although they may not find rooftops to be attractive, they are still adopting the open access model, and a lot of greening on the industrial front is also happening. So personally, I feel the companies who are very bullish and who would like to participate in the residential solar space, Gujarat is one of the top states to be there. Yeah, I think there's some internet issue with Guinea.
Yeah, seems so. So anyway, Hiten bhai, actually,
Okay. Sorry, I think there was some issue at Guinea's end, internet end.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hitin, for sharing your insights on this market. And I think there are a lot of follow-up questions on it, especially on the policy front, that we will get back to you. But let's hear it. We have heard about the open, rooftop solar market. Indu, now let's hear it from your side. What are the opportunities in the open access solar market in Gujarat?
Thank you, Jyoti, and happy to share whatever we have learned over the period of time. I have 2 slides actually to sort of use. I'll just use my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Great. So, so basically, what are the RE options, renewable energy options for a corporate, and particularly this is more relevant for large industrial or commercial users, right? What are the sort of options through which they can source greater percentage of renewables? That's what I'm going to focus on. And if we talk really about sort of how Gujarat has evolved over a period of time, right? The wind was predominant for the last couple of years, wherein there was a very favorable wind policy. But this is going to expire in 2022 March, right? There was exemption of 50% exemption on cross subsidy and additional surcharge. And then it was allowed to set up to an extent of about 50%. But the new wind solar hybrid policy made some very attractive proposition for more and more industrial and commercial users to adopt green power. Now, what the hybrid policy and subsequently it is tariff order which was published in April 2021. It says that any consumer can install up to about 50% of the contract demand, and they can source that power from wind solar hybrid power project, right? And the concept of wind solar hybrid in this case is that it should be evacuated in the same substation. So basically using the common infrastructure for both facilities, however, the metering for solar part and wind part to be done separately, right? It provides, technically any user can replace up to 45% of the contract demand by wind solar hybrid plant, right? And in the subsequent slide, we will talk about and we'll compare what are the sort of advantages wind solar hybrid will provide over wind or solar alone, right? And it provides another 2 crucial incentive. One is 50% exemption in the cross subsidy and 50% exemption on additional surcharge. That's an important one. The second is that there is an electricity duty exemption on wind solar hybrid power as per the policy in 2018, and which will be ultimately governed by the Gujarat Electricity Act, right? Any surplus power, and it provides a facility to utilize power in a billing cycle, which is a month, right? Any excess energy which is not utilized within the month can be procured by DISCOM, or it will be procured by DISCOM at 1 rupee 75 paisa, right? The energy, if somebody want to claim RECs or RPO benefits, then it requires scheduling, which will be done on a 15 minutes time block basis, right? This is the sort of broad outline of what the policy is all about. Now, if you look to compare, right, why and how wind solar hybrid is an attractive option, and what are the percentages that can be replaced by each sources, depending on what are the policy provisions that we have. Now, if we look at sort of a generation mix, right? Wind solar hybrid, it's a 24/7, right? Which basically because of the generation nature of both solar and wind. Whereas solar, it's only the daytime, and wind, which is also a 24/7, but the energy component, the outcome of the per MVA of capacity is much lesser because there is no solar component added to it. So in terms of, if you look at the plant load factor basis, right? Wind solar hybrid being the highest, which can provide about nearly 50% PLF, whereas solar only, these are on AC capacities. Solar would be about roughly 25 to 27%, and wind would be about 30 to 36%, right? In terms of cost of system, wind solar hybrid will be the maximum because there are both elements involved. But however, the per mega, because there is a per megawatt more generation for the same evacuation capacity. Let's say you take evacuation capacity for 2.7 megawatt, right? The transmission charge which is applicable is on per MVA of capacity or per megawatt of capacity per day. Now, the more the unit that we can generate on per MVA of capacity, it makes more attractiveness for the end user. So basically, if we look at just one variable, which is the transmission charge, if there is a wind solar hybrid, because there are two sources evacuating at the same capacity, your transmission charge is about 35 paisa. Whereas if you do only solar with AC capacity, the transmission charges is as high as 70 paisa. In case you do only wind, it is about 50 paisa. So this is one of the major difference. And another issue that to highlight is that how the energy is settled over these three sources, right? Now, wind solar hybrid is monthly, so which means in a billing month, it will be adjusted as per the TOD system, but they are giving you giving a time of 1 month to adjust that amount of generation. Whereas it remains same for wind, but it is different for solar, and they are allowing you to settle only in the daytime, which is 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. is a time slot, right? And if you look at from an attractiveness point of view, purely from a sort of generation and sort of how much additional charge that you'll have to pay, obviously wind solar hybrid becomes much more attractive, right? This is why we believe it is going to be a predominant source wherein the more and more corporate users would be looking to tap on this. Now, if you look at how is the sort of generation graph of three sources vary over a period of time, right? This is what typically it looks like, right? In case of wind, which is the sort of blue line, you will see that it is more predominant, in the evening hours as well as the night time, right? And this is where green is mixing with the blue line. So that is where the hybrid, the green one is the hybrid power. And solar, if you look at it, is the red one. Now, if we superimpose both, right, the hybrid curve will be looking like the green one, which will provide you a 24/7 power. But of course, it will vary to some extent based on the generation patterns, right? And this is why wind solar hybrid is much more lucrative option rather than only solar or only a wind option. Now, talking about the commercial angle of it, right? How much percentage you can replace as an industrial or commercial user? And I have, for this particular example, I have just used one consumer having a static load or continuous load for 24/7, so that the comparison becomes slightly easier, but it can vary depending on the consumer to consumer, right? If we look at typically I mean, and both models are now possible. And Gujarat has by and large opened also the group captive model as per the latest notification that is coming through. And of course, as we have mentioned, there is already the third-party established model for wind, and they have introduced in April, they have agreed for a third-party model also through the tariff order, right? Now, if we look at both the models, let's talk about how much percentage anybody can offset, right? Wind solar hybrid typically can offset about 24 to 25% of power for a continuous load plant, right? If we technically take 50% of contract demand can be replaced by wind solar hybrid, and or 45% actually, 0.5 the contract demand into 0.50% into 0.9, which is due to the power factor. So 45% capacity can actually be replaced by wind solar hybrid. Whereas this remains same for wind, which in that case can only replace about 18 to 20%. But in case of solar, there is no limitation as such due to contract demand or linked to contract demand, right? So therefore, so the percentage replacement is higher, but the another catch is that they have limited the window of settlement only between 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. only during that particular day, right? So that is why the replacement percentage is in and around about 35 to 36%, right? And in terms of savings, and this is on a landed cost basis in comparison to a current cost of power, grid power, which is around 7.2, as a cost. It is at 1 rupees 50 paisa, which is great without having investment. Solar doesn't make sense because it is fully loaded in terms of both cross subsidy surcharge and additional surcharge. So it goes beyond grid, and because of the higher transmission charge, it is just not making a case for a third party sale. And in case of wind, you typically save about 1 rupees, right? Whereas if you move into a group captive option, you save actually quite a lot, right? In case you do only wind, that is about 2 rupees savings. But if you do wind solar hybrid, its saving goes to about 2.5 rupees roughly, right? In case you do solar only, if there is no option at all, you have to only do solar, then you save roughly about a rupee per unit of energy cost. Now the critical part of the whole thing is that what it provides in terms of banking, right? And why landed cost of solar is higher and leading to lower sort of saving is that 100% of the energy that is generated by the solar system and being injected to the grid, it is considered as a banked power, right? And that charges, the bank power charges is 1 rupee 50 paisa in addition to all other charges. So ultimately, because of that factor, the attractiveness of solar little goes down. And if you look at sort of more a sort of a banking incentive, right? Monthly settlement is works. Most of the industries work very well. And in that case, solar becomes a challenge to some industries wherein the predictability of operation is somewhat not that stable. So therefore, all in all, the attractiveness of wind solar hybrid, it's much higher in a state like Gujarat with the policy in place. If you talk about only wind, we have only 5 months left for the policy to expire, unless it is the same policy is getting extended. But if you look at all in all, what is the potential opportunity for you as a consumer to tap in Gujarat? Either you do on a captive or a third-party model. This is wind solar hybrid, right? And in terms of and this is taking into account that the consumers are at 66 kV or above. For 33 kV, for consumers the option, I mean, the wind solar hybrid will provide savings, but savings will be still somewhat lower because the wheeling charge and wheeling loss will come into play. To about sort of 50%, but then solar that, and tell you commercial we believe wind solar hybrid provides much more liquid for a captive or a good captive model. So that is how in terms of policy layout. In terms of our presence, we are doing about, we have already commissioned actually 60 wind capacity in. We are going for wind solar hybrid first. Should be commissioned in April, which is in terms of considering the attractiveness, I think it is.
Indu, I think there is an internet issue at your end. We are not able to hear clearly. But nonetheless, I think this is a very interesting presentation, and maybe we will come up with you with some follow-up questions. And I think
for both the developers as well as, I think there may be a problem.
okay. Thanks, Indu. We were not able to hear in between. I think there was internet issue at your end, but a very interesting presentation and very interesting summarization of all three models here. And I think there are a lot of questions from the audience also in this. We'll come back to you about a few more follow-up questions, but let's hear it from our last panelist on the session today. Vineet, hi, thank you for joining us for this session. You've heard the equipment suppliers and the EPC contractors perspective here. And now we wanted to hear, being a leading manufacturer, having a base in Gujarat itself, what is your take on the Gujarat solar market in India?
Thank you for the webinar. I mean, this is really very informative. I would say, Induji, your presentation was really insightful. I mean, it's a very complex policy, and the way you have broken it down into a simple summary, a lot of thought has gone into, definitely. So in terms of Gujarat solar market and from a manufacturer perspective, so definitely Gujarat has taken the lead in manufacturing. Maybe it is because of the enterprising nature of the people here in Gujarat, but overall the state has become a cluster for manufacturing in India. Whatever the current capacities are there in India, South Gujarat belt, so belt from say Surat to Bombay, the cumulative installed capacity of manufacturing solar modules is the highest in the country right now, and there is going to be a lot of more projects for manufacturing that are announced in the state, in Dholera, in Kutch, in Jamnagar, in Mundra, and then in industrial towns like Surat. So definitely the overall manufacturing attractiveness of the state has got a lot of solar investments into the state. Looking at the current and the future probabilities or market sentiments with the PLI coming in, announcement of BCD at the central level. But still, all things said and done, a lot of things which are still to be clarified, to be brought on the field, on the ground. A lot of policy decisions are yet to be taken, which once announced will bring a lot of more clarity to the manufacturers which are planning for expansion, or new industries planning to come into this space of manufacturing, be it module, cell, and the other value chain items, or even the ancillary products like glass, maybe. So Borosil is the leader in India, and then there is no one else. So there are a lot of opportunities for manufacturing in India, and predominantly Gujarat, because still there's a lot of dependence on imports, and we have a very good geographical advantage being at the center point of the country in terms of logistics, in terms of being near to the port, be it Bombay Port, Mundra, and such Mundra, and few other such ports. Here I am a little bit. I want to spend some time on the current solar policy that was announced in 2021 January, which is in place right now for the next 5 years. The market has suddenly shrunk down for the industrial rooftop or open access projects, where the industries are looking to put up a sizable project, but because of policy unclarity, or decision making yet to be done. Say if someone wants to do a 1 megawatt and this is a zero export project, there is no clarity how to do it, whether it is behind the premises, on the rooftop, on the ground within the premises. There is no clarity on that. How do you register for the project, and how do you get the synchronizing done? So a lot of projects in our company, people I know in this sector are waiting for this policy clarity, because there are policy restrictions on net metering up to 500 kilowatt. And then if you want to go for the open access, like Induji mentioned, there is a lot of open access charges levied in terms of cross subsidy, additional surcharge, and additional losses and things like that. So a lot of attractiveness has been taken away, but the only good sign was that they allowed daily banking. So the previous restriction of having a 50% contract demand as a solar capacity has been taken away, and now you can do up to say approximately 2x of your contract demand if you look at your 11 hours of consumption. So that's a good step, but I don't think it is good enough, because they have taken away 1.5 rupee of banking and 10% of losses, which is practically not there. So I don't think it is supporting CNI segment in India, in Gujarat per se, and a lot of policy interventions need to be done for this particular segment, which is say above 500 kilowatt, and who doesn't want to do an open access project. I'll put my case till there.
Thank you, Vineet, for this information. This is really helpful. So now I think we'll have some questions from our from the people that we're getting. So Mr. Indu, there's one question for you, that how many years waivers are given in the wind solar hybrid? And people also want to know if you can explain the offset percentage again, because your voice was not clear that time. If you can explain again.
Ginny, sorry, I think I could not hear your question. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So it's like, how many years waivers are given in the wind solar hybrid?
The waiver that we are having in wind solar hybrid, it is for essentially two elements, which is for cross subsidy and additional surcharge, and that is applicable for the policy period, which means that any project which is commissioned during this period, the applicable exemption is available for the project duration, which is for the project life.
Okay. And can you please explain the offset percentage again? I think you have mentioned in your PPT.
Yeah, so, okay. Let me try that once again.
Yeah, if you can share the PPT again, because last 3-4 points were not clearly.
Yeah, is that visible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. See how we have calculated the offset percentage, right? So we have taken a constant operating load, which is at 66 kV connected consumer. Now, if you look at the sort of, starting with wind policy, what it says that you can install up to 50% of the contract demand, or source 50% of the contract demand from wind, right? This is what the policy says. And if you go by that, that what is the PLF that you can achieve from 50% of the capacity of your contract demand, and you plot it against your consumption. Let's say the consumption is 100%. I want to offset my 90% of my consumption because there is some buffer that I would like to have. And then on the contract demand, I will get a limit up to only 50% of my CD, right? Now, based on that, if we plot 24/7 operation of 1 megawatt capacity or 1 MVA of contract demand, right? The energy that we can generate from 1 MVA of turbine would replace about 20% of the consumption, right? So 1 MVA, if it run 24/7, which is 24 hours, 1 into 24 hours into 365 days, that is how many megawatt hours that is required by the facility, right? And now in my wind power plant, I can generate so much megawatt hour per so much units per megawatt hour, megawatt of installed capacity or per MVA of capacity. Now I have a limit up to 50% because there is a restriction, right? Now with that 50%, how much I can replace? So this is coming to about roughly 18 to 20%, right? Whereas in case of wind solar hybrid, the limit remains same. So the 50% limit is still there, but because I produce more energy during daytime because of solar, so I can replace a greater percentage of the overall consumption, which then in that case goes up to about 25% roughly. The problem with solar is that because there is no contract demand restriction as such, but what is stated in the tariff order as well as the policy, that you have a period wherein you can settle the generated solar power, right? Which is between morning 7 a.m. to evening 6 p.m. So you have only that time to replace your consumption. So technically, out of 24 hours, you have 11 hours to utilize solar power, right? So within that 11 hours, let's say I want to replace 90% of my consumption, and then I plotted that, okay, within 90% of consumption, I can replace about 11 hours, right? And what is that 11-hour generation of solar power is equivalent to? So that will, in that case, it will go to about 35 to 36%, right? Now the problem is that, I mean, all that was good. However, the problem is that all energy that is generated and injected to the grid is considered as banked. And there is one charge which is imposed as a banking charge of 1.5 rupees. So that makes the case slightly weak in case of solar. Otherwise, solar would have been a much attractive option, maybe more or less similar to what wind solar hybrid is, right? But because of this banking charge, the solar is not that attractive as compared to a wind solar hybrid option.
Okay, got it, Renu. Thank you so much. There is one more question for you. So, what is the minimum required percentage of wind power generation capacity for a project to be identified as a wind solar hybrid?
Sorry, again, not clear. The question is not very clear.
Okay, so this is a question from Mr. Sujit. He's asking, what is the minimum required percentage of wind power generation capacity for a project to be identified as wind solar hybrid?
See, technically you can, so what you are actually getting permission for, you are getting an evacuation permission, let's say for 10 MVA of capacity in a particular substation, right? So at any point of time, whatever combination you do, you cannot exceed 10 megawatt of injection to the grid at any particular point of time. Now that leads to a background calculation of how much percentage of hybridization you want to do, right? You can do actually 100% or maybe slightly more, but then because at some point of time, solar and wind both will generate power, and on those hours, you will lose certain amount of energy. So which basically will lead to certain clipping losses, right? So you will have to basically then see that what is the commercial, how much commercial gain versus how much commercial loss that I have, and what is the optimal size of it, right? Technically speaking, I mean, and not technically, but from a commercial angle, what we are talking about is a hybridization of anywhere between 50 to sort of 80% hybridization. This is what depending on obviously on location to location, it might vary a little bit, but that is the ideal combination to go with. So what I mean by that, 80% hybridization for 1 megawatt of 1 MW of wind capacity. So you can practically install about 800 kilowatt of peak of solar capacity.
Okay, thank you so much, Indu. So next question, I want Mr. Hiten to answer that. So what is the view on the current net metering charges and the cap, and what is the expected going forward?
Yeah, so this is really one of the not so nice inclusion in the new solar policy from the state. Although they have allowed third-party ownership and the contract demand has been enhanced for end customers to adopt solar. But when you add the wheeling banking charges, it's almost to the tune of 1 rupees 40 paisa to 1 rupees 80 paisa, depending on what connection the end customer has. And then when you consider the solar LCOE as typically, let's say, 3.5 to 4 rupees for a rooftop, and then you add these approximately 1.5 rupees, and the grid electricity is anyways available around 6.5, 6.75. So the net savings in a OPEX kind of a model is restricted to probably just 20-30 paisa. And if you end up putting in a capex model, then your saving is probably to the tune of 80 to 90 paisa, which is not found really appealing for a lot of people from the finance community in these industries to then find solar viable. Therefore, in my opening remarks, I mentioned that the state is a good fit at the moment for the small residential solar and open access projects, plus open access solar wind hybrid projects.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hiten. One more question for you. What are your views, and can you share your information on the Gujarat Solar Urja Rooftop Yojana?
Yeah, so I mean, as a policy document and as a vision, the state is a leader, no doubt. However, these few hiccups on the charges, which are not really typical of and fair for a solar project, right? Because a solar rooftop project is going to produce power which is going to be consumed at the point of generation itself. So per se, there's really not a burden on the grid in terms of transmission and wheeling and banking also for that matter. And also there is a discrepancy whether these charges will be on the per generated unit or whether it will be only on the per exported unit. So I believe these are some areas which which call for a need for clarity, and I believe the industry is waiting for that patiently.
Right. Mr. Vineet, can you throw some light on the policy interventions that are required in the state presently, which can help the rooftop segment in Gujarat?
So this banking charge is a very big deterrent. What Hiten bhai just mentioned, if you are generating power on your rooftop or within the premises and you're consuming it daytime, real time, then I mean it doesn't make sense to charge you for that. I mean, then you have to pay 1.5 rupees of banking charge, although you consumed it in the daytime, and still there is this banking charge. It removes a lot of attractiveness from the whole equation, and then the industry people don't want to take a risk of putting a solar either in third party or captive. So that is one big deterrent in terms of the banking charge. And then the whole situation where they are not allowing zero export, again, that is something which is not really logical. If you are putting solar on your rooftop or within the premises and consuming it daytime without any requirement to export and get a net meter, still there is need for policy clarity on how to get that done. And till that time, we are waiting for the policy clarity because these things are silent on the policy front. Apart from this, in terms of intervention on the rooftop residential market, uh, the government has recently enhanced the previous year's 600 megawatt allocation to 750 megawatt. Although, any global product, solar product prices have increased drastically. The whole value chain from the module to inverter and BOS items have increased drastically, and the GST cost has increased from 5 to 12%. And still, the government is expecting people to put up solar in the older prices, which is not practically possible, and it's a loss business for everyone if they do this. So rather than waiting for the older allocation to get subscribed, they should close that policy and begin the new 900 megawatt announcement, and then ask for fresh applications of pricing and channel partner applications and things like that. Because market has matured, people want to put up solar on their residential rooftops. There are enough channel partners in the market to go and execute these projects, but because of the dependence on this, I mean, not dependence, because of the existing policy pricing, it doesn't make any sense. It's not feasible. All the local associations are representing at the state level to get the new tender prices and scrap the old tender is one front. Also, in terms of policy intervention, there was this policy for small scale distributed solar SSDSP, and there were close to 3 gigawatt of applications, which is unheard of across the country for a 1 megawatt or half a megawatt project. Assuming that the project developers would have received subsidies in capex and interest subsidy under MSME law, which was very much eligible. And there were few projects in the past in third party sale who had received those kind of subsidies for the MSME solar project. Considering that everyone had put up their files, they had purchased or taken land on lease, they had deposited a lot of EMD bank guarantees, and suddenly there was a announcement from GUVNL, who is not a party to subsidy dispersal, to discontinue this subsidy thing, and then allowed the developers to take back the whole application process. So it was in a way not handled properly, and at the top level, there were a lot of confusions and maybe difference of opinion internally in the department levels. Overall, the market suffered badly, and a lot of people had put a lot of their skin in the game, but that whole process has now put a doubt on the Gujarat's distributed solar market, and whether there can be a similar repetition in the future is going to be a thing that everyone will keep in mind before bidding for projects in Gujarat now.
Yeah, right, Mr. Vinay.
Yeah.
So, Vipin, I just want to know from you that, what is your outlook, like Goodbee's outlook for the next 12 to 18 months with respect to Gujarat solar market?
Gini, as far as next year is concerned, so we are seeing a good business for the residential segment for sure. So that will be completely subject to the prices of the modules, inverters, and raw materials, as mentioned by Mr. Vineet. So we have seen the major spikes in the majorly in the segment of commercial, industrial, and as well as the small scale utility projects. But residential was keep on going with a good flow, because you see there are many players in the Gujarat market, and they were having two things to do, either on side a commercial projects or on a residential project. So residential projects were having only a challenge of that is the cost, right, on the product. But apart from residential, commercial and utility segment are facing the both of the challenges at the same time, considering the cost of the product and project, as well as the policies uncertainty, like about the subsidy scheme withdrawal. So that creates a big hindrance in the market, and that surely gives an impact on the the investor mindset on that part. So, but we can see because there are some need modifications that are expected to be done in the policy, and it is highly in favor of the market as well. If let's say banking charges and then those which have been discussed in the panel as well. So if that can be sorted out, then surely there would be a very good business outlook in this for financial year of 2022.
Sure, Vipin. Yeah, we'll also think the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's an open, now it's an open question, so anyone of you can answer. So do you think COVID has impacted this market of lately? And what are the next steps to be taken provided there is a scare of third wave coming in the next 2 months? So your views?
Yeah, so I feel COVID has definitely impacted all of us in the solar, not only the solar, but in the renewable and in general industries, small, large, everyone. And I believe looking at the growing costs of panels and the metal items like copper and aluminum, I think most of the solar companies should probably think of securing inventory simply to control the cost of the modules, as well as also to have material available so that the customers are served on time, and the LDs are not really kind of put into action. And also, I believe all of us need to be very, very careful about drafting and executing contracts with our customers and developers, considering the force majeure clause was something that was not given any serious thought prior the COVID wave 1 and also wave 2. I believe now the risk assessment and cost controls will have to be given more importance, and also will have to be done with more seriousness.
Thank you, everyone. I think there are some questions from my end now. I've seen a lot of, I have talked about the banking regulations in general that which have been getting, restrictive banking regulations, I think, across states. So it's my question is for Indu, you and Hiten, you are the best people to answer this. There is a Ministry of Power guidelines also right now, wherein they have put a cap on the banking is allowed for 10% only for open access consumers. So do you think what would be the possible implications of such thing? Putting on banking charges is one, then allowing it on a monthly basis is another thing. But do you think putting a cap on the overall how much energy you can bank, what could be the possible implications of that?
I think broadly, the first part is that the state government or particularly state regulatory commission will ultimately decide what would be the sort of final outcome of such a sort of provision of limiting the banking to only about 10% or so. I think the intent from the government is also that it should be much more predictable, and therefore it should be an easier task for a grid also to manage their power flow in a given state, right? But for a renewable, I think that puts enormous pressure in terms of predictability of our generating source, which is solar. I mean, in certain cases you can predict, but providing a day-ahead schedule and meeting subsequent, it's a very difficult task. And particularly if you are doing at a much smaller scale. I mean, if it is at a sort of couple of gigawatts together, that may be much more predictable to look at. But if it is only one substation, you are required to provide a schedule only for 50 megawatt capacity, it becomes a very, very difficult task. So I think it is a regressive move in a way. I think broadly we should definitely renewable still has lot to sort of deliver over a period of time. I mean, we have seen the recent coal crisis, right? How it has impacted almost every consumers across the states, right? So I think we should give sufficient incentives for promoting renewables, and it should be the grid that ultimately has to support it, right? Which is through proper regulation.
Right, Indu, there is again follow-up question on this. Someone in the audience have also asked this, which is what is, in this case, you are saying that yes, discoms want to have certain schedule. So possibly if you can explain what is the impact of DSM regulations that you have also shown in your comparative analysis.
See, as long as we are not claiming REC or RPO benefit on the power, it is, we do not need, I mean, we need to provide a schedule, but that's not leading to any penalties as such, right? Because it's on a monthly settlement, and that is happening over the TOD slots. So for example, the power generated in a given slot will be adjusted in the same slot in the consumption schedule, right? So I think which is a fair sort of ask from the regulator or from the DISCOM side as well. We also understand that they need to buy power at expensive rates at peak slots, but you know, ultimately, as of now, I think to talk about specifically on DSM, as of now, not so significant impact, because if we are not really going for an RPO or an REC basis, which requires then 15 minutes scheduling, and if you deviate from 15 minutes schedule, of course there are subsequent impacts based on as per the DSM regulation. But if you just purely want to save cost, I think it is very easy to do as of now.
Thank you, Indu, for informing us about that. Hiten, probably we can take last two questions for the session now. With this recent Ministry of Power limit on the net metering for a 500 kilowatt, have you seen what is the impact that you are seeing in the market, especially from a developer perspective? You know, what is your take on this, Hiten?
So it has definitely slowed down the market pace for sure, because anyways, the consumers who had an ability to consume a large megawatts of solar production, which happens in the daytime, was anyways very limited, considering you have the other parameters like bankability and structural stability of the rooftop building and the environment in which these industries are located. So a lot of feasibility and a lot of deals which were already in the pipeline were hit with a lot of uncertainty. And then because till this notification came out about 500 kW, it was in the news that it's only probably going to be restricted to 10 kW. So a lot of industries were then starting to look at alternate options, and open access has then found this as a blessing in disguise, because suddenly you see a lot of hype and a lot of positive movement towards private open access parks developed, and the policies are also showing more reciprocation and more aggressive support to the open access and hybrid solar wind parks and so on. So the rooftop markets have definitely suffered and seen a lot of slowdown. And because finding customers who are able to still find a cap of 500 kW with net metering commercial incentive enough for them to take the risk to put something on the roof and add another power plant on the roof is becoming a much smaller pie and a much smaller pool.
Thanks, Hiten. I think that is true. This is what we are also hearing from other developers and EPC contractors also. And I think that's it for our session today. It was quite an interactive discussion, I say. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you all to all the attendees for taking out time to attend the session. The recording of the webinar will be available on our website shortly. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.